Hello, Delaware State Hornets. My name is Dakota Bowden, and I am here to welcome you to the first episode of Beyond the Lecture podcast. Today, we are so honored to have special guest, Barclays Community Reinvestment Officer, Adam Ahmad, with us today. Before we jump into today's conversation, it's important to share a little backstory about him. Mr. Ahmad's occupational title as a CRA is to identify opportunities for capital investments and work with some of your favorite local business owners and real estate agents in the market today. Currently overseeing a $250 million portfolio of loans and investments, Ahmad is leading the pack through his strong people skills, his keen sense of all things business related, and his network of contacts throughout the tri-state. From working with American Airlines, NetBlue, and the NFL, Ahmad has an eye for dollars and the opportunities. With such an impressive resume and experience as our guest speaker, he continues to look forward to fostering and growing partnerships on behalf of Barclays, making a difference in our communities. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a very informative and fantastic episode ahead of you. You do not want to miss it. Without further ado, sitting with Professor Yao Williams today, businessman, husband, and father first, Adam Ahmad.
Adam, welcome to Beyond the Lecture podcast here at Delaware State University.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. Appreciate you guys having me.
It is so great to have you, and you are our first guest. So what an honor for you to be here, and we're excited to dive into the conversation. I know that we heard a little bit about your bio, but I want for you to share a bit about your background and how you come to sit in this seat or end up in the role that you're in.
Okay, it would be my pleasure. Again, thank you for having me. So it was a long, tumultuous path that I never would have thought would have landed me in the Community Reinvestment Act seat for Barclays Bank. I started out my banking career in the operations space. I was supporting with mortgage servicing, so when folks were not able to pay their mortgage, it was my responsibility to help them navigate, do all of that. An opportunity came to me. My manager reached out and said, "Hey, Adam, we have a special project where we need some help creating policies, procedures, etc. For the processes that your team manages." I said, okay, I'll give it a shot. And I am a firm believer in always looking for extracurricular opportunities, whether it's in school, whether it's in work, whatever it may be, sports, because it helps broaden your expertise. It helps give you a wider knowledge base. And that opportunity led me into tech writing within the financial sector. I also have some commercial lending in my background, so I supported risk and control activities within the banking sector. Whenever the bank would bring on new partners like Gap or the NFL or Uber, it was my responsibility to vet those opportunities and find risk in it and help the team build controls around those opportunities. The second piece that led me to the role that I'm in now is having a mentor. I'm a firm believer in making sure that you have a mentor. My mentor told me about the Community Reinvestment Act role at the bank. And he said that, it's an interesting opportunity. He's like, I know you have a commercial lending background, dig into it. What are your thoughts on the role? So I did a little legwork to learn about Community Reinvestment Act, to understand what my specific bank has done life to date within the CRA space. I said, let's take a leap of faith. Went after it. Rest is history.
Awesome. That was a nice trajectory, right? And you got to see where you landed. So I want to talk a little bit about, because in our business and society class right now, we're talking about corporate social responsibility, right? And CRA kind of really falls under that umbrella. So could you, two things. One, share what you believe the role of business, or the role corporate social responsibility plays in modern business today.
Absolutely.
And then we'll kind of dive into what CRA is.
Absolutely. So the times that we're in now, if you look at most Fortune 500 companies 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago, corporate social responsibility was not as critical or in the forefront of those organizations. The younger generation, our generation, and the ones coming behind us are holding these large corporations to much more accountability. Not only are consumers expecting large organizations to provide the products or services that they're using, but they're also expecting these large organizations to have some level of impact on the community.
Yes.
Whether it's supporting low to moderate income, whether it's supporting different causes that their customer base supports, whether it's diversity, whether it's LGBTQ, whether it's different religious affiliations that they may have. So by the consumer base holding these organizations accountable, these organizations are recognizing, hey, we need to play a bigger part in social responsibility. And not only will we draw in more customers by doing that, we'll develop more loyal customers because they're able to see that affinity. So for example, with most of your credit cards that are out there now, they have different loyalty programs. Some of the loyalty programs may be to support Thurgood Marshall College Fund.
Yeah.
It may be to support different HBCUs. It may be to support, for example, when the war kicked off between Russia and Ukraine, it was to support Ukraine, things like that. So you're starting to see that a lot more where consumers are expecting these large corporations to have impact on a community. And specifically with corporate social responsibility as well as CRA, you will see now when these large organizations are going after partners or going after new clients, that's a part of the pitch because the client is asking, okay, thank you, big corporation A. We appreciate that you guys are the leader in your industry. You have competitor advantage. But putting all that aside, what are you guys doing to have impact on the community?
That's right.
And if an organization doesn't have a strong answer for that, that can truly jeopardize them potentially winning that client. And I've been on the opposite side of that, seeing, where these organizations that, a company is trying to bring on as a client will ask those questions and will double click on those answers to say, we want to know more about what you're doing in this particular space. So it's definitely becoming more and more prevalent. And I think we have to thank our generation as well as the generation that are coming behind us because they're putting more of that focus and more of that pressure on these organizations to have that impact.
That is so true, and that is so good. I think that is very important that companies and corporations really understand the value of their stakeholder and their shareholders to make sure that it's not just about where I am and where I'm ranking in the top Fortune 500 or any of those things, but what are you doing collectively for the causes that are in the world today and the local community and all of that. So. With that being said, could you tell us a little bit about the origins of Community Reinvestment Act and what the primary objectives are?
Absolutely. So Community Reinvestment Act was put in place back in the 70s. Prior to Community Reinvestment Act being in place, banks, large financial institutions that are providing mortgages for people that are looking to become homeowners were blocked out of moving in certain areas. It was called redlining. And redlining is when a financial institution or real estate broker would physically take a map of, let's say, Delaware, draw red lines around it and say, we're not offering mortgages in this zip code or this zip code, because they did not want to create a financial lift in those communities that were low income, that were predominantly Black, that were predominantly Latino. So Community Reinvestment Act was put in place to help mitigate that. The way it looked when it originally came out was ultimately them saying, hey, banker, we want to see how you're having impact in this particular community. These disenfranchised zip codes, what impact are you having? And it was measured. It's measured through the Fed, the FDIC, and the OCC. They will come in and sit down with bankers or CRA officers like myself and say, okay, tell me how you're having impact in the communities that you serve. Why that's important is if we provide evidence to say, okay, this is what we've done in the 19801 zip code, and the regulators look and compare that to our peers, if we're not in lockstep, we can receive a subpar rating on our CRA program. A subpar rating on your CRA program prevents a bank from being able, one, to expand, to bring on new partners, or to launch new products. So CRA is mission critical for a lot of banks, and it's not widely known for those outside of the banking sector. A lot of folks have looked at CRA and recognized the potential and the impact that CRA has. If you look at Operation Hope, which is led by John Hope Bryant, which he created Operation Hope, which is a financial literacy program that helps folks from LMI communities understand finance, understand the basics of having loans, things like that. But it's a lot of dollars that go towards supporting CRA. So for Barclays Bank, I manage a portfolio of just under $250 million. We have to put $50 million in market every year to meet the CRA eligibility. And what that looks like is affordable housing, economic development, support for small businesses, financial literacy. It's quite a few different ways that we can go about supporting, but again, it's there to support communities that are predominantly black and brown, because unfortunately that's the communities that need the most support. And the most unfortunate and surprising thing is that many people of color don't know about CRA.
No.
So while I'm in the seat, I made it my mission to figure out how can I, one, help as many folks as possible know about CRA, and help them leverage the tools that are available there to have big impact.
Absolutely. And I think that that's one of the missions and reasons why you're here today, is because not only do you have an opportunity to share with our students what CRA is, but any viewer that'll be here will be able to see this and be able to know and understand what that is. As a small business, you can call your bank and ask them what are some of those things and ways in which you are reinvesting, and what does that look like, and what are the programming that you're doing, so that you'll be able to see, because they have to be transparent in that right. So I think that this is the first step of really beginning to educate people on what that looks like, especially within our community. So again, we're so excited that you're here to share this information and all of that. So I know that you shared overall what that looks like, but can you kind of drill in on some of those success stories within CRA significantly, how they've improved, maybe some areas right here in Delaware?
Absolutely. So in the Wilmington area, there is, in many areas in Delaware, there is a huge need for affordable housing. We partner with Reach Riverside, which is the teen warehouse in Wilmington, to provide them with capital to build the purpose-built community that they're doing in Wilmington. For those of you that are not familiar with purpose-built communities was started and funded predominantly by Warren Buffett. I'm sure everyone knows Warren Buffett. And they've done communities in Atlanta, in Texas, in a few different places throughout the U.S. But the reason that purpose-built communities are important is because it builds an ecosystem around the housing that's being built. So it's building grocery stores that are close by. It's making sure that there's education, making sure there's transportation, infrastructure, so that the people that are living in these communities can have success. If you look at many affordable housing communities that are throughout the U.S. and most are urban environments, there typically isn't that infrastructure that's built around it. They'll take a big building, 100 units, 50 units, whatever it may be, drop it in the middle of the community, tear down existing houses that are there, convert most of the folks that were potentially homeowners now into renters. By changing that landscape of having folks go from homeowners to renters creates an automatic lack of interest in the community that you're in. When you create homeowners, homeowners have a bigger interest and more vested in seeing the success of the communities that you're in. So that's one that we funded. We also work with the United Way of Delaware to create the Minority Small Business Program. It was started during the pandemic. Many businesses struggled during the pandemic, but Black and brown businesses were especially impacted during that period. So we partner with the United Way to figure out, okay, how can we have impact and support these businesses that are being neglected? And the program that we stood up provides training, education. It helps the business to identify needs and gaps within their business, whether it's accounting, whether it's marketing, whether it's sales. And they will work with a dedicated coach to help them get those skills. And then at a midpoint and an end point, that business will receive a grant to help them scale and grow. A lot of the programs that are out there provide education, which is good, but sometimes money is also helpful as well to help the businesses grow.
Absolutely.
So being able to provide those grant dollars helps those businesses succeed.
That is awesome. Such an impactful and mission-driven success story. So this is awesome. I think that one of the things that I want to kind of talk about a little bit more is what innovative approaches do you see banks, whether it's within your own organization or others, have taken to meet the CRA guidelines, right? So we have the purpose-driven, we have opportunities for the housing and different things like that, but what are some new and innovative approaches that you see them taking to meet those guidelines?
So a very unique one that I've seen is the organization that I mentioned earlier, Operation Hope. They provide that financial literacy, again, for communities. One thing that one of our peer banks did was they are a bank that has clients and partners, things of the sort. They looked at the client base of some of the clients that they work with. So what do the customers look like demographically? Are they low income? Are they blue collar? Are they, white collar individuals? But what they did was they brought in Operation Hope and had them go in and support the particular organization that they helped was Delta. So not only did the bank meet their CRA requirement, but they partnered with Operation Hope to have a deeper impact on the client relationship. So it created a knock-on effect in that the employees of Delta were able to get financial education, financial literacy.
Wow.
And those same individuals were able to, of course, engage their family, make sure their children know about it. But for the bank, it created a win-win because now they have a loyal client that sees, okay, what they're doing from a CRA perspective is having a deep impact. And the client looks at the bank to say, okay, you guys are doing this, so we're much more loyal and want to stay with you as a partner and have that longer term success. So that's one unique model that I've seen that's impressive. A model that, not to toot our own horn, but one model that is a success is how Barclays partners with DSU.
Absolutely.
DSU being the only HBCU in Delaware, we recognize the commitment and the importance of supporting HBCUs for multiple reasons. One, by supporting DSU, we're able to have access to top talent coming out of the school. You guys are creating some brilliant scholars coming out of the school, and being able to have an impact on an HBCU in that way is impressive because business success is truly driven by the diversity within leadership.
Absolutely.
And being able to get diverse talent from HBCUs helps the organization grow, it helps the organization to be a success. I had a call with LaShawn, with Dr. Allen, a few other folks some years ago, and there was talks of standing up a institute that would help, that would be similar to the Brookings Institute that gathers data, helps capture critical metrics that are necessary. And through those conversations, and one of my peers that's no longer with the bank, she's moved on to bigger and better things, but we ultimately created this relationship where we will provide $1 million donation to DSU to be able to have that deep, strong impact. Yeah. And just through those relationships and continuing to support different initiatives here at DSU, like Deep Day. There was a couple of weeks ago where Barclays has the Premier League in the United Kingdom, and they are a large funder of the soccer teams there in the UK. We had some professional women's soccer players come here to DSU, meet with some of the students, the women's soccer players here at DSU, and just building those types of relationships where students are able to have that kind of one-on-one interaction with someone that they may not normally have access to.
Yeah.
But all of that falls within the CRA program. So it's finding ways to be creative and create deep and lasting relationships.
Absolutely. And as you said, we see that firsthand here at Delaware State University with your partnership. As you said, with Deep Day, one of the ways in which we saw that and our students are able to really understand what it looks like to be a recipient of that, but also begin to reinvest. So I'm not sure if you know the first set of the business case competition, that winning team took their earnings and created a real estate company and purchased houses all throughout. And right now, I believe that their company is 4 of them, and they have about 12 properties throughout. And that was the seed fund from getting winning that. So you see firsthand what that does. And it also was, and that was the year that you all, everybody that was a part of it, did financial literacy. So they used that experience, that understanding, that knowledge, and as well as that seed that was planted, that scholarship to be able to do that, that will shift the trajectory, not only for their lives, but for those, for years to come. I don't know at 22 and 21 years old that I would have taken those funds and started a real estate company, right? So I think that is a true testament. We see that firsthand of how you could see those success stories. So I wasn't sure that you knew that.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
That is very impressive. And that's the thing about CRA and just more importantly, building relationships with organizations like Delaware State University that are really on the ground doing the work. That in a lot of ways doesn't get the recognition that it should. But that's impressive. That's mind blowing.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you talked a little bit about how you got in this role and all of that, and you got to hear the success stories. So tell me, what motivated you to kind of get involved and continue to stay involved in the community reinvestment and development and all of those things?
So, backstory, my grandfather was a serial entrepreneur. He had a restaurant, he had an oil company, he had a demolition company.
Wow.
My wife, she ran a daycare for many, many years, so I was always surrounded by entrepreneurs. And the one thing that really lifts folks out of poverty is, 1, financial literacy, and 2, I feel like it's small businesses. Small businesses are the biggest employers within the U.S. Like, you'll see large corporations that have huge amounts of employees in pockets throughout the U.S. But when you look at the macro level of the U.S., the largest employers is going to be small businesses. So sitting down face to face with some of these small businesses and hearing their stories of difficulty, hearing their stories of success, hearing their stories of downstream impact, like you talked about, having impact for generations to come, is what kept me motivated to continue to do the work that I'm doing. I look at, going back to my grandfather again, his sons and his daughters never had a 9-to-5 job until they were probably in their 40s, because they were all able to continue to lead and manage the businesses that he started. So to be able to have that downstream impact, which, I sat with my grandfather many, many times, and, he talked about why he started business and some of the challenges that he saw being a business owner of color back then. So I'm sure it was much tougher back then than it was now, than it is now. So being able to see that level of impact and see how that can change the trajectory of his children. And I mean, I'm not talking 1 or 2 kids. Back then they had 9 kids. So it was a bunch of them. So to be able to see that impact that his work, his sweat, and his toil had on his children was impressive to me. And it reminds me every day when I'm sitting down with a business owner and they're talking about where they're trying to get to, what they're trying to do. It reminds me of that. And in my own way, doing this work is paying homage to him because we're creating more and more and more business owners. Through the Minority Small Business Program, we're at almost 150 businesses that have come through. We've seen revenue increase on average of, I think it's 125%.
Wow.
So it's really impressive. It's hard work, but it's impressive to see the results on the back end.
Yeah.
And it's like, I say it's hard work because I'm the banker that's meeting with the United Way to do it. There's folks that are really, rolling up their sleeves, doing it day to day. But it's impressive to see. And I mean, even with some of the affordable housing work that we do, you'll see folks that, went from renting or were living in subsidized housing, being able to become homeowners, take the equity from the home, buy an investment property, using that investment property to get another investment property. And their children will never know the level of poverty that those parents had. And it'll change their landscape because the children will now see the work that the parent has done and won't settle for the things that the parent did when they were younger or were forced to be subjected to. So it's truly changing the landscape for those that are coming after them.
Awesome. That was such an incredible motivator, right? And I think that just learning about your grandfather and all of that, like it makes you get up and want to go and do it every single day. And, we're reminded of where our parents start and where we are today. And to your point, when you see your parents shift and come into a different space and a different economic status, it makes you want to understand and want to continue that legacy and continue to see that when you talked about generations of your family members not having to have a 9-to-5 until their 40s, how incredible is that your grandfather's legacy continues to move on. So these are great motivators. That is awesome. So what are some things that our students, a student can do right now to begin, whether that is investing, whether that is using what they're learning in the classroom to be a part and get into the organization and things like that?
Absolutely. So a statement that I've heard, and I'm sure many of you have heard time and time again, that's truly undervalued, that I even undervalued myself when I was younger, is your network. Your network is your net worth.
Absolutely.
Your network is truly critical to your success. Being able to build a wide network, interacting with people that are in the space that you want to go into, interacting with folks that you want to, and that are on a path that you want to go to. There's another saying: if you're around 5 broke people, you'll be the 6th one. So you're the average of your friends. So when you think of it that way, take a look at the people that you're spending your most of your time with, and evaluate: are these people, 1, where you want to be, or 2, heading in the direction that you want to go? If not, I say make a change. 1, your network is critical. It is absolutely critical. Another piece is definitely begin investing sooner rather than later, because the time is going to pass anyway. There will be opportunities to buy new sneakers, new clothes, all of those types of things, but the investments are what's going to last for you. I would definitely say make sure that you are taking advantage of opportunities to continue to work on yourself. Once you get out into the real world, once you get out into a corporate environment, make sure that you're working harder on yourself than you are on your job. And what that looks like is continuing to read. There's a stat that said most people, once they graduate high school, rarely pick up a book again. Do the exact opposite. Pick up as many books as you can. Yes. I personally, when I'm riding into work, or when I'm working out, or if I'm doing stuff around the house, I'll have an ear pod in and I'm listening either to an audio book or a podcast, because you have to continue to feed yourself so that you can continue to grow and succeed in whatever endeavor that you're going after. So network, continue to learn, continue to grow. If you're interested in growing your network as well, one thing that I would recommend is make sure that you have a LinkedIn profile. I think everybody has an Instagram, and LinkedIn is where business gets done. I don't know how many of you have a LinkedIn profile, but I would definitely recommend creating one. And it's very easy if you're looking for someone that's within a certain industry to search and find and continue to build, because your network is absolutely going to be key. And again, keep working on yourself, continuing to read and learn as much as you can.
These are great tools, and I hope that you all are taking heed to those and begin that process now, because as you said, it's never too early to begin investing in yourself, networking, and doing those things. So I have one more question for you, and then I won't take up any more of your time. I'll give our students and audience an opportunity to speak with you. So, how do you see the role of community development professionals evolving over the next decade?
Very good question. So, I mean, I can even see a difference from when I started within the Community Reinvestment Act space to now. What community development looked like 6 years ago, 7 years ago, was the large-scale developer, typically not a person of color, doing these large-scale projects. Sometimes they would be in low-income areas. Sometimes they would be low-income area adjacent, and they would create a carve-out for low-income renters. What it looks like now is you're starting to see more developers of color come to the table. A real life example of that is a program called Jumpstart Wilmington, which is under an organization called SENAIR. Their mission is to identify scattered site houses, which is houses that may be on a block in the middle of, a regular neighborhood, but a property that may be blighted or may be boarded up or may be a property where there's a lot of drug activity in and out of that home. That program will take a new emerging developer, give them education, build an ecosystem around them so that they will understand zoning, so they'll understand title work, so that they'll understand what the development process looks like, help them understand what it looks like to work with a GC or a general contractor, what it looks like to hire subs to complete the project. That's one piece that's changing from the boots on the ground development. Yeah. Another aspect that we're starting to see the change is, I'm sure many of this generation is familiar with crypto, blockchain, all of that kind of stuff. You're starting to see now where there's fractionalized ownership with the debt that's associated with these projects. There's a gentleman that I'm working with out of New York that's creating just that, where he's looking at low-income housing development, but instead of going to a regular bank to get the majority of the funding, he'll crowdfund and tokenize that debt that's going to be on that real estate. So why is that important? That's important because an individual like myself or you guys that are trying to build your investment can put capital towards that project where you're able, one, to have an investment strategy, two, have an impact on a community of folks that look like you or a community that you may have come from, and three, being able to help build an organization that's creating that type of impact. I think in the future, we're going to see even more of that, where that ownership is no longer one or two individuals living high on the hog off of these communities of color. I think we're going to see more individuals from these communities that already have a vested interest taking ownership stake in these projects that are impacting their communities. And the key to ensuring that happens is making sure that folks like us, folks coming out of HBCUs, or coming from these communities have that education and are able to be a part of these different opportunities. Those types of opportunities where we're talking fractionalized ownership of real estate, tokenization of real estate is going to be a game changer for those folks that get in early, learn as much as they can about it, and leverage the success that's going to happen from it.
Awesome. Well, folks, you heard it here. Make sure that as we begin to progress, you begin to educate yourself and progress and be a part of those individuals that own a part of the community and the capital and all of those things. So whatever that investment looks like for you, I look forward to seeing more of us owning, more of us understanding and building our communities. So I thank you for helping us go beyond the lecture on today. And I am going to open it up now to our class to ask any questions that they may have at this time.
My name is Ryan Jones. I'm a freshman, class of 2028, major in marketing. And you talked about a lot about community reinvestment, so I was just wondering, what are some of the measures and signs of a good impact in the community? Like, is it just like building or like reinvesting in small businesses? Like, what does that look like?
Very good question. So to dig in a little deeper in what the strategy looks like, my team at the bank, every 3 years, we'll create a strategic plan where we will engage nonprofit owners, political organizations. We will engage for-profit organizations to help us identify what the needs are of those particular, whatever community a bank is servicing. Once those needs are identified, a bank will typically build goals to meet those needs, whether it's affordable housing, whether it's healthy food access, whether it's financial literacy, whether it's economic development. So those goals will be built around those metrics. For Barclays, our outstanding rating represents roughly 56 million each year. We have a satisfactory rating, which would represent about 39 to 40 million. And then anything below that is considered not meeting the mark. So when a financial regulator comes in to sit down with us, there's roughly 4 ratings that you can get from a CRA perspective: outstanding, satisfactory, needs improvement, or severe noncompliance. The 2 that I mentioned already, outstanding or satisfactory, we will typically go after a outstanding rating. And what that'll look like is that figure of 50 some odd million. We'll deploy it in many different ways. Some of it is through acquiring of mortgage-backed securities that will target specific low-income areas. We will provide LIHTC, which stands for Low-Income Housing Tax Credits, deals. We'll provide capital to support those projects. So when the regulator comes in and sits down with me, they're like, all right, Adam, let me see what you guys have done for the last 3 years to meet the CRA eligibility. I'll provide metrics that show, okay, in 2024, we did 52 million. 2023, we did 53 million. 2022, we did X. And the regulator will look at all of that information. They'll engage with community stakeholders to say, okay, are the needs that Barclays identified actually the needs of the community? And then they will also do like a sanity check with those organizations to say, okay, what kind of impact has Barclays had specifically on your organization? So it's being able to quantify and clearly articulate the investment opportunities that we're going after, and showing, 1, that we're doing it, but 2, that it's impacting a low to moderate income community that's within our geographic footprint. One thing that I'll double click on is the reason we'll target an outstanding rating is that if a bank ever has a satisfactory rating and there's a serious compliance issue where there's, let's say, a breach of customer data, the regulator will automatically downgrade your CRA rating by 1. So if we have a satisfactory and it gets downgraded to a needs improvement, all of those things that I talked about that a bank wouldn't be able to do, new territory, new products, new partners, we wouldn't be able to do those with the needs improvement rating. So that's why we'll target the outstanding rating in the event that there ever is a compliance issue. But that's the gist of ultimately how we measure the impact that we're having on the community. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Hello, my name is Dakota Bowden. I am a freshman here at Delaware State, and I am a business marketing major. My question to you is, throughout this entire podcast, you shared a lot about how we are working on putting more people of color on the map and improving our economic status in small income environments. I know with such a high demand that there's also a demand for stability. Could you share with the class and I how you keep yourself at a standpoint to where you're able to wake up every day and keep your eye on intention and stay forward after your goal?
Very good question. So me personally, the number one thing that keeps me grounded and keeps me focused, prayer. A relationship with God, and making sure that, one, I am aligning the activity that I'm doing every day with the purpose that He's given me.
Yeah.
If I feel like I'm marching in accord to that, that makes everything else a lot easier. You're still going to have problems, but it makes it a lot easier. Number two is being able to spend time with family. When I'm out in the corporate environment and I'm doing different things, whether it's in the community or what have you, once I get home and close the doors, I try to leave all of that outside, because it's like, when you're out in the world, and many of you will learn as you grow, mature, and have your own families, there's a lot of noise in the world that can distract you from your real most important job, which is a husband or a father or a family member. And being able to leave the problems of the world outside and make sure that you're there for your significant other or your children, me personally, that also helps me stay grounded. And the last thing that keeps me grounded and being able to stay focused is looking at where I've come from. How I talked about my grandfather, how I talked about my aunts and uncles that have played a role in my life, and going back even further, looking at the ancestors that have come before me and the challenges that they have faced in order to have the success that they have. Sometimes when I run into a challenging situation with work, naturally we want to complain, we want to vent, but then I take a step back and say, one, we're truly blessed to be in the positions that we're in presently. Two, if I look at those that came before me, their journey was much harder than what we had to endure. So I'll roll up the sleeves and say, you know what, we got to stay focused and keep going. That's why a part of when I'm listening to books is I make sure that I'm getting biographies so that I'm able to hear stories of successful men and women that have lived before me. Because sometimes when we're going through our day-to-day journeys and we run into challenges or we run into problems, those problems seem like they're the biggest thing in the world. But when you're able to read about folks that have come before you and have surmounted different challenges that will dwarf the ones that we're facing in that moment, it makes it a lot easier to get up and keep going.
Thank you.
Those are my 3 things.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Zoe, and I'm a freshman here at Delaware State University, and I'm majoring in business management. And I would love to ask you, what was the biggest challenge you faced at Barclays, and how did you address that?
Very good question. The biggest challenge that I've faced at Barclays, I would say, is ensuring that the work that I'm doing from a CRA perspective, that leadership is able to see the impact. What I mean by that is, there are certain, and this is just in a banking environment, there are certain roles within the banking environment that are looked at as a regulatory requirement. Leadership may not necessarily look at it and say this is a revenue driving opportunity for the bank. This isn't something that makes commercial sense for the bank. By being able to work with organizations like DSU, being able to work with organizations like the United Way, and create a deeper impact by the dollars that we're deploying from a CRA perspective, is important because it helps leadership recognize why we're doing what we're doing from a CRA perspective. Some folks in leadership in other banks will look at CRA as, oh, this is just something that we have to do because the regulator says that we have to do it. Let's just put a couple dollars to the side to do what we need to do and keep it moving. But being able to show profitability with the investments that are being made, being able to show that we're bringing in diverse talent into the bank, being able to show community stakeholders that are saying, you know, hey, and Barclays is a perfect example. Because we're a UK bank, we don't have a real US presence, so many folks don't know the name of Barclays. But if you ask community stakeholders in those communities where we're funding affordable housing, they absolutely know the name of Barclays because it's changing what their community looks like. And being able to hear folks tell the story of, you know, this was something that was important to me, and because of the funding that Barclays made, you know, it changed the trajectory of my lineage to come. I think that adjustment was a little bit challenging in some ways when I first got into the role, because I would consistently hear folks say, oh, okay, what are these loans that we have? Oh, these are just CRA loans. These are just CRA investments, and it's way bigger than that. You know, we look at one of the bigger investments that we're beginning to make is investing directly in other CDFIs, community development financial institutions, which are other banks. So you look at One United Bank, for example, which is a Black-owned bank. By large banks like Barclays investing more capital into Black-owned or minority-owned financial institutions, those financial institutions, similar to an HBCU, has their hand on the pulse that much closer than a large bank ever would for the community that they're serving. So being able to support those types of organizations, again, creates a deeper impact. That was a long way around of saying, I think that was the biggest challenge that I had, was changing the mindset of leadership to say, while we are making these investments to adhere to a regulatory requirement, we're creating deeper impact by doing these investments.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Anybody else? You have one more question.
Okay.
All right.
My name is Jaden Weatherspoon. I'm a junior here at Delaware State, majoring in management and information systems.
Okay. Pleasure to meet you.
Nice to meet you. You spoke briefly about your environment and mentorship. I'm curious to know what mentorship looks like for you at this point in your career, as well as what Barclays is doing to really shape the next generation of young professionals, especially for those who may not have the example growing up or at the point they're at now.
Very good question. So what does mentoring look like for me? For me, mentoring now has shifted a little bit because I have mentors that are within the organization. So just to give you a view from the top down, I sit two levels down from the CEO of the bank. So I could have the CEO as a mentor, but for me, I feel like the work that I'm doing, I love doing that. I want to be able to find ways to have broader impact, not just for the specific geographic region that the bank has a footprint in. So what mentors look like for me are individuals that have nationwide, sometimes international impact with the work that they're doing. CRA is a US only regulation. We're starting to see the UK develop some banking regulations that will mirror what CRA looks like, but they're not there yet. So for me, it's mentors that are having a wider, deeper impact on the same communities that I'm supporting now, but just doing it on a national or international scale. Your second question was around what are some of the things that Barclays is doing to have an impact on young professionals. Last year, Barclays kicked off a event called the Rising Leader Symposium, which we had the pleasure of having DSU present at. It was in New York, at our office there in Times Square. They flew in students from all over the country and exposed them to different areas of the banking environment, whether it's real estate, whether it's marketing, whether it's investments, whether it's utilities, whether it's municipals. They helped all of these students get a lens in terms of what are the different areas of banking that they can get into. Even for myself, when I was younger and in school, I really didn't have a good lens in terms of all of the different areas and different expertise that fall within the banking sector. So exposing students to those different types of initiatives is one thing that they're doing. We also have a graduate program and we also have an intern program. We actually had 2 students here from DSU as a part of our intern program this summer that just ended. One of the students, I think, is the head of the real estate group here at DSU. So being able to, and those same 2 students were a part of that Rising Leader Symposium that happened in New York. So being able to interact and engage with these students and then see them come into the corporate environment and work with, the heads of all of these different departments is impressive. And I had the pleasure of sitting in on the capstone project that the 2 students did. Each of the interns had to do a different project for the department that they were in, talking about what they learned, the business impact that they themselves had, some of the things that they appreciated about the bank, and where do they see themselves going from there. And to see, I interviewed those 2 young ladies as well when we were at the Rising Leader Symposium in New York. But to see those 2 young ladies sit at a table with managing directors and the CEO of the bank and have these senior leaders wowed by the level of skill and acumen that these young ladies executed with is impressive. I will tell you that the 2 young ladies that came through the graduate program, that came through the intern program, were the only 2 students of color in that intern program. And to hear the leaderships, how they were just blown away by these presentations from these young ladies. And I have to take hats off to my peer, Pat Chilson, who does a lot of recruiting and engagement with schools. He is always at my desk saying, hey, Adam, listen, what are we doing next week with DSU? What are we doing, this coming week to be able to ensure that we have good representation and are able to bring in more colleagues? There's a student, former student, Marquez, who graduated from DSU.
Yes.
He, same thing, went through that same kind of trajectory. And he and I meet now about every couple weeks from a mentoring perspective. And he'll always, grab me and say, hey, Adam, can we get some coffee? Let's talk. I want to talk through this problem I'm seeing. And, being able to be that sounding board for a more junior colleague is fulfilling for me. But it's also nice to see how he's continuing to grow and excel in the work that he's doing.
Thank you. That's amazing.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Well, Adam, this has been such a impactful and transformative discussion. We want to thank you again for being a part of our Beyond the Lecture series and being our first guest.
Yeah.
So we just wanted to take a moment to say thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
We have enjoyed this so much, and we thank you for all of the knowledge, all of the expertise, and just all that you have poured into our students, our guests, and everyone. So thank you.
Oh, no, thank you. I truly appreciate, you guys inviting me here. I'm glad that I was able to be the first one. Hopefully I set the bar high. And I think the work that DSU continues to do in the community. And to all of the students, please, please, please take advantage of the resources that you guys have. Dr. Cash, Dr. Williams, being able to leverage these individuals that have been blazing trails and making a difference and pouring into students like yourselves, it's impressive. So please make sure that you guys are taking advantage of these resources. If any of you ever want to look me up on LinkedIn, feel free. It'll be my pleasure to have time with you to sit down, talk about the career direction that you want to go, how we can help. It'll be my pleasure. So do not hesitate to reach out in any way.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you all so much. We did it, our first live podcast. Thanks for tuning in to Beyond the Lecture. We hope you've gained valuable insights and inspiration to take your business knowledge to the next level. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave us a review. Until next time, keep pushing boundaries, stay curious, and remember, the learning never stops when you're going beyond the lecture.